Yes, it's a time to remember the great trip we had with Will and Norma, seeing the fall colors. Now let's just sit back and look at the highlights of that trip. Now our 11-day, 1,900-mile tour originated and terminated in Philadelphia, and it encompassed 4 states: Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, and New Jersey. Now, more specifically, our itinerary was as follows. We departed San Francisco on Sunday, October 2nd to Philadelphia. Wilbur and Norma arrived there on Sunday. Lois and I arrived there on Monday after a night's stay at the Hilton in Chicago, O'Hare Airport. From Philadelphia, we went to Ephrata, Pennsylvania. We did the surrounding areas there, Lancaster, etc. And then on Wednesday morning, we went to St. Mary's. On Thursday morning, we departed St. Mary's and went to Fredona. That day we did a lot of circling around here, not because there was a lot to see, but because the navigator got us lost. Now, I don't know who the navigator was. Then on Friday, we departed Fredona and went up through Niagara Falls and over to Oswego, New York. From Oswego, we traveled to Lake Placid, New York, spent Saturday night there, and then on Sunday we went up around the tip of Lake Champlain. By the way, that's only a few miles from the Canadian border. And from there we went down into Vermont and up to Stowe. We stayed there Sunday night, which was Columbus Day. And from here we went down through Vermont and stayed Monday night in Bennington, Vermont. On Tuesday, we left Bennington and traveled down through the state of New York, the state of New Jersey, and spent that night at Lumberville, Pennsylvania. The next morning, we toured the area and then headed for Philadelphia. And then on out to the airport, where we caught a flight that took us through Denver to San Francisco. And now let's review all the highlights of that trip. Well, Wilbur and Norma, while you guys are sleeping, here we are in our hotel room at Chicago. Let me show you what's out our window. Would you believe it? It's the O'Hare Airport. There's the new control tower they're building. And here's the existing control tower, if I can get around to see it up here. It's a nice day. It's still pretty early, and we're going to be heading to sea in a few minutes. So be aware, we're going to be on our way. See you later. Here they come. Look what they're doing. They're going to pick us up. So we're going to start our fun time. And we're crossing the Schuylkill River and that's the city of Philadelphia to our right. We're on our way to Ephrata, but we're first going to stop at the Valley Forge National Historical Park. This is the visitor center. And this was the site of the 6-month winter encampment by the Continental Army. General George Washington and 12,000 soldiers kept the British Army bottled up in Philadelphia. Now this is the Historical Museum. And this was George Washington's headquarters, which we could tour. It was a beautiful day, and you'd never realize that when Washington and his troops were there, how cold it was and how many died because of the cold. Good, huh? Having a good time?
Sure.
All right. Going to Washington's?
It's beautiful here. I love it.
Here, you've got a situation where this building was not designed or intended ever to be a military headquarters, and with the number of people trying to live.
Remember when the steps were so little?
Now, this was the kitchen in Washington's headquarters. Now, just adjacent to the headquarters were these huts for the troops, for the various brigades. You can see how they live. And look at this little guy looking at us. A little squirrel. Well, this is called Artillery Park, and you can certainly see why, with so many cannons. And here's Will observing one of them. Look at the size of that, huh? Over there. Watch out, don't let it go off on you.
Somebody's jam cooked candy wrappers down in there.
Historic Smithton Country Inn in Ephrata. It's the first bed and breakfast we stayed at. And there it is. It was first opened in 1763. Let's go inside, shall we? There's the sitting room. By the way, this is the next morning. We had a good night's sleep. We had a good dinner that evening, too. That's the entry hall. Let's go into breakfast, shall we? Norma? How you doing? Well, after a very good breakfast, we went out to enjoy the dahlias that the innkeeper, Dorothy Graybill, had planted and won many prizes with. She always had a nice bouquet of them in the sitting room. And then let's show you our bedroom. Those are nightshirts. I wore the red one. And as you can see, this is the red room for obvious reasons. Now let's go over and show you Will and Norma's bedroom, shall we? This is Will and Norma's room. It was on the first floor. And every evening, the innkeeper would come in and light all the candles in each of the rooms. Well, it's time to go visit Lancaster. It was the Anderson Pretzel Factory, where we took a tour to see how pretzels were made. And my goodness, you never seen so many pretzels in all your life. Well, this was the dough, and it went up into dropped off into a vat, and then a machine extruded the pretzels into their form. This was a different kind of a machine here, where the dough was hand put into the machine, and they had a twisting machine, which you'll see in a few minutes. More pretzels. Now there's the twisting machine. Now Jan and Craig lent us an audio tape that you could use in your car, and it would tell you about these various things that we'd be seeing. So let's listen to it, shall we?
Yourself, how pretzels are made. But do you know how pretzels got started? Or for that matter, why? Well, legend has it that the first pretzel was made in 610 AD by a monk. They were baked as prizes to get little children to remember their prayers, hence the shape. a twisted form representing children's arms folded in prayer, and the three holes representing the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and also the name, pretzel, which is from the Latin, pretiola, or little reward. These little shapes of twisted soft-baked dough taught a lot of prayers. But did I say soft-baked? Yes. Were it not for an absent-minded monk who left the pretiola in the oven overnight, you probably wouldn't like pretzels half as much. But thanks to the monk's absent-minded lapse, we now have crispy brown pretzels. Just add salt, and voila, the pretzel as we know it today. But let's not talk about them. Let's go see them being made. And, bring one back for me, will you? All this talking is making me hungry. Turn me on when you get back in the car and you're ready to leave the parking area.
Now, before touring the Amish country, let's just take a moment and look at a few of the pictures of the Amish people and hear what the audio tape had to say about them.
The Amish and the Mennonites are similar in many ways, especially in philosophy. They both worship peace. They are both introspective sects. Their lives are simple, free of clutter and confusion, and they worship God through their plain and simple demonstrations of brotherhood and love for all mankind. The differences between the two sects, however, are highly visible to the casual observer. The Amish are, for instance, much more strict. They wear clothing in the manner of the 17th century because they believe that plain ways are closer to God. The Mennonites have more freedom to choose their clothes. The Amish allow no cars, no electricity, telephones, indoor plumbing, or modern conveniences. They stay totally clear of any complexities furnished by the outside world. They even worship in the houses of parishioners instead of a church. None of this is true of the Mennonites. In the past few years, some Amish have formed a splinter group called the New Amish or Church Amish. They are more liberal than the old order and allow many more touches of modern life. These people are perhaps the middle ground between the old order Amish and the Mennonites and may even be closer to the Mennonites in their outward behavior. But enough background for now. Let me just say that our main interest today will be the old order Amish. Oh, don't let me forget, there are a few old order Mennonites who also dress like the Amish and ride in buggies. From this vantage, we can also see several Amish houses. They're easy to spot. No wires of any kind lead into them. Indeed, not one tie links this house with the outside world. It stands alone and self-sufficient. Cleanliness and order are the rule inside and out. You may be surprised that people who dress so somberly have such brightly painted houses, whitewashed walls, and even grape arbors and tree trunks.
We're now in front of one of their farmhouses. You'll note no wires, and there's a bell on top of each of the houses so that they can call their neighbors in emergency as well as call them in from the fields. This is an old grist mill, an old roller grist mill, and you should listen to this old gentleman talk to us.
A miller, hale and bold, beside the river Dee. He worked and sang, morn till eve, no lark so bright as he. This is the burden of his song, wherever he used to be. I envy no one, and no one envies me. Old man Rustler used to recite that standing up here at the doors when he was receiving wheat.
Oh, that's great.
The old Amishman that was a boy here, he remembered it and he recited it. My mother learned that poem in school. Fourth grade reader.
Well, this was the family home that was adjacent to the grist mill. And the grist mill, by the way, provided flour in the early days for Nabisco. The brick on this home was all painted red. Now we're out in the Amish countryside again, looking at some of the produce they have. Hey, Norma, how'd you like to take home some of those goose gourds? And of course, here's a covered bridge. And we're just on our way back to the Smithton Inn. So we'll see you tomorrow morning, shall we? Hey, look at that fresh bouquet. How'd you sleep?
Yes.
Whoops.
Listen, look at that one.
Aren't they pretty?
Oh, that is.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And
Everybody.
yes, and you run a fine inn, Dorothy.
Thank you.
Yes, we've enjoyed it here.
Beautiful
You
place.
gotta stay longer though the next time.
Right, we'll do that. Thank you.
Okay.
We are at Weaver's Farm. It's Wednesday morning, I think. And look what they have bought. Will wanted this. And Norma tried to talk him out of it. But you know how that goes. When Will's got his mind made up, he's got his mind made up. Now, Norma, what do you think, Norma?
I like it.
You like it? And what do you have, Lois?
Lois's, too.
See, that's going to look nice in the
Now, what
coach
are you gonna
section
do
of the
with
airplane.
yours?
Now we're in Lillet's, Pennsylvania, and this, of course, is the famous Wilbur Chocolate Company. They really had a good display of all the old implements they used to use to make chocolate. And there's a 5-cent Wilbur sweet chocolate bar. Here they are making it today. Notice how fast they make chocolates today. This, of course, is the chocolate pot collection. I don't think they make many chocolates during a whole day. Now we're in an antique store in the outskirts of Hershey. Watch it, Will. I thought you could drop that. Now Lois bought a little Hummel out of this collection there. And now we're in downtown Hershey, Pennsylvania. Look at that light standard. They look good enough to eat, don't they? Then it's on to St. Mary's, Pennsylvania, and this is the bed and breakfast that we stayed at there, the Townhouse Inn. This was our room. Wilbur and Norma didn't want it. They wanted to go up one more floor. They seemed to like heights. This was a gorgeous room and a real neat place. This fireplace was just beautiful, and the mantel was something else. Well, it's about time, I think, that we get ready for breakfast. So let's go downstairs and see who's in the drawing room. How you feeling this morning?
Oh, great.
Yeah, oh, great. Hi, Will. Nice room in here. Boy. Yeah, the molding is something else, isn't it? Well, it's time to be over there for breakfast. And just before we eat, let's take a quick walk around the house, shall we? It was built at the height of Victorian opulence, as you can see, and it's typical of the homes and lifestyles of the wealthy in the early 1900s. According to local historians, the original owner was a prominent local physicist and businessman. He purchased the land in 1899 and moved into his completed palatial mansion in July of 1907. Now, by the way, this stained glass was brought over from Europe. Area craftsmen constructed this elegant home, and oak trees from surrounding forests provided most of the woodwork. And mahogany, such as this, was imported for cabinets in the downstairs rooms, and it was handcrafted by local skilled artisans. These beveled glass windows were just gorgeous. There was an awful lot of beveled glass as well as stained glass throughout the house. Now, the Townhouse Inn really comprised 3 restored buildings plus a carriage house, and it accommodated about 60 rooms. Now, this was the Willows, and that's the house that we were in. And it was the latest addition of older homes to the Townhouse Inn. Certainly would recommend anyone in that area of St. Mary's to stay there. It was beautiful. Look at, here's Will admiring the woodwork in the willows where we were staying. Look at that wainscoting. Beautiful panels. It was so well maintained also. How about that for a ceiling? Well, it's Thursday morning and we're headed to Fredonia, New York. We're just leaving the state of Pennsylvania, and Fredonia's right adjacent to Lake Erie. We'll be staying at the White Inn. So we'll show you what the White Inn looks like. Well, the White Inn was built on the 1868 home site of the county's first physician there at Fredonia. And it has 23 rooms and a real good dining room. We had dinner there and it was great. Let's go show you our rooms now. This is the third floor hall, and we're heading for Will and Norma's room. It's room 312. So let's go see him, shall we? Hi. You're cleaning up?
Yes. We don't want to.
Who's that guy sitting over there?
We don't want that. Well, that's Will, George.
Well, that's Will. Yeah, I should. You're the groom,
That is
huh?
a hide bed.
It is a hide-a-bed?
Is that?
Now, this room that Will and Norma had was the bridal suite. And all the rooms had antiques or period reproductions. This, of course, was their bedroom. And right across the hall was our room. It was called the Lincoln Room because of the bed. The bed was a reproduction of Lincoln's bed that's in the White House. Another view of the sitting room in our suite. This, of course, is out in front of the White Inn. And it was on early Friday morning. And that's Will and Norma's room up there, that corner one. And now we're on our way to Niagara Falls. Now this is the Niagara River as viewed from the U.S. side. And that's Horseshoe Falls. We're looking across at Canada. This tower there is 775 feet tall. And now you can see the Maid of the Mist, which is a boat that takes people wearing raincoats right up into the mist of the falls. There's 1.5 million gallons per second of water that flows over those falls. Now that's the Rainbow Bridge that takes you between the U.S. and Canada. And to the right is the American Falls. That green water is said because it's 170 feet deep there. Just look at that power. Now the water comes from 4 of the 5 Great Lakes. Now Now we're on the Canadian side, and the first sight we seen was an abandoned barge that got pretty close to going over the falls. You can see all the rainbows. Now this is Horseshoe Falls, and it's 170 feet high and 2,500 feet around the brink. In the distance there is the American Falls, which is 180 feet high. Another Maid of the Mist boat. There's 4 of them. The water from the falls actually travels down Niagara River to Lake Ontario, then the St. Lawrence River, and then finally to the Atlantic Ocean. Now I ask you, who but God could have created such a beautiful waterfall? No one. It's just an awesome sight. That's the American Falls. This video from the Canadian side is taken from Queen Victoria Park. And there's 3 visitors here I think we should meet.
Yeah.
Beautiful day here.
Very warm.
Warm, yeah. You enjoying it?
Very much. Beautiful.
Good.
Well, from Niagara Falls, we went through New York's apple country, stopped and admired a few trees, and went along the shores of Lake Ontario to Oswego, New York. And here it is, the next morning, Saturday morning.
Good morning down there.
Oh. Every time you turn around.
I heard Norma say, every time you turn around, there's George and his camera. Now, there were some really nice young fishermen there that told us the reason for no vacancy throughout the city was that this is the time of year that the salmon run in the Oswego River. And they told us where we could go that morning to observe this fishing spectacular, which it sure was. Never seen so many anglers side by side, and yet very few tangles, because they were all appeared to be good sportsmen, and when anybody would hook a fish, they would get their line out of the way. And Gary, how would you like to be there fishing that river? And I know our grandson Todd would like to be casting his line out. Well, let's see some of the fish they catch, shall we?
Jump, Jack! Coming down! Bring him in. Good.
Are they all salmon?
Mostly salmon. You see a different, like, walleyes and
Oh, okay.
all kinds of other things. Some trout, brown trout, steelhead trout.
Gee, there's some big fish out here, too.
Yeah.
How long does this season last?
I'm not for sure exactly. A couple months.
One last look at the fishing area. How pounds would they run?
These are probably, that's probably like 30.
30
Probably
pounds?
Like 30, 31, 32. Those are probably about 15.
Oh, gee, that's neat.
From Oswego, we went along the shores of Lake Ontario, then up into the Adirondacks. And this was on our way to Lake Placid, New York. Thanks to our very patient driver, we made a number of stops and a lot of U-turns to go back and get that picture that we wanted. This, of course, is in the Adirondacks. And now we're at Lake Placid, and that's the ski jump area. That tall tower is 295 feet high. Now this is Mirror Lake as viewed from the front of the Holiday Inn, which is where we were staying that night. And it was, of course, over the Columbus holiday weekend. And we were told that all the accommodations in Lake Placid were completely sold out. The weather was nice. No, that's not snow. That's in the lobby, and that's a picture of one of the previous Winter Olympics. And now we're going down the main street of Lake Placid. The night before, we had walked this street and stopped in many of the quaint shops and, of course, bought a few things. And from here, we were headed to Vermont. And there we are. You might know it, an antique store. You guessed it, we're at the famous Von Trapp Lodge. A beautiful place, and it sure brings back memories of the sound of music and the story associated with the Von Trapp's life. Well, from there, we headed up into the Green Mountains. Again, this is just out of Stowe, and this 2-lane road takes you up to Smuggler's Gap. I'm sure glad Will was driving. As you can see here, we had to wait for cars. Just one at a time could pass at this point. This is right up in the ski area. The Golden Eagle. We stayed here, and as you can see, it had rained the night before. We'd gone to dinner just across the street at a real nice restaurant. Had a great dinner. Had to dodge a few raindrops, but that's really all. Well, here we are at the Waterbury Center, and Will and Norma found something there they just couldn't live without. And Lois and I seen a nice lamp there, and we liked it, but we thought, Well, 20 miles down the road, we changed our mind, and Will and Norma said, let's go back. So let us show you what we got. Well, this is the lamp that we purchased. It's now hanging in our family room, and it certainly gives us good memories of the trip. Stop at Ben & Jerry's, the famous ice cream maker.
Ben and Jerry. Smile in there. You're not smiling, Will.
Well, this church is in the little town of Waterbury. It was very interesting architecture. Pretty typical of the kinds of churches, of course, that you've seen throughout Vermont. It's Monday, by the way, and we're on Route 100, which I'd call more of a back roads type of a route. Very picturesque. Waitsfield. And yes, that is a covered bridge that is right up there ahead. We'll stop so we could read the sign that told when it was built. And the sign said it was built in 1833. As you can see, there was a few boards that had been replaced, but the basic timbers were still the original ones. And from here, we went to the little town of Warren, and it was at Warren where we turned around and went back to purchase that light that we have now hanging in our family room. And the neat thing about stopping here was there was an antique sale going on. You can see Lois going up to it. Where's the rest of our shoppers? There's Will. Hey, Norma, there's bargains in there. Ah, here she comes. Well, from there, we went on to a pumpkin and apple farm. There's Norma getting us some apples, and were they ever good. Another little roadside stand with apples. We had lunch here, and then it was on to Stockbridge. It was here that Will and Norma spotted 4 chairs that they really wanted. However, there was no way to get them home. So, disappointedly, we left there and headed to Bennington, where we stayed at the Four Chimneys Inn. Well, it's now early Tuesday morning. I'm just out taking some video of the grounds. 7 B&B rooms. It did have a real large restaurant downstairs. This is a hydrangea, certainly far different than what we see out here. Now, the residence was completely destroyed by fire in 1910. It had been rebuilt. The foundation, by the way, dated back to 1783. The grounds were quite extensive. About 14 acres. You can see frost there on the ground too. It was kind of cold that morning. This is still on the grounds. And what you see in the background looming up there is the Bennington War Memorial. Now let's go inside. Here we are. There's a view looking into one of the dining rooms. And up the stairs on the second floor, there is Will and Norma's room at the end of the hall, and we're on the third floor. And from the inn, we just went out that morning and just took a leisurely drive around the old town of Bennington. We thoroughly enjoyed the fall colors. It's just beautiful, isn't it? There were some really nice homes in this old section of town. Very elegant. We're now out of the state of Vermont and back into New York. Here we stop to again look at the foliage. And all I can say is that it was awesome. But back to reality, we then thought, how do we get all this stuff home? So we bought some boxes, tried to put them in the car. How you doing, Lois? That'll teach you to buy so much. And then it was on to the United States Military Academy at West Point. And here they go into the visitor center. We were running short of time, but we did want to see the cadet chapel. And this is it. Let's go inside, shall we? The chapel was erected in 1910 and has been acclaimed as a superb example of military Gothic architecture. Stained glass windows are superb. Now these flags, we were told each one of them has been carried in a war. The chapel also contains the largest church pipe organ in the world. And the stained glass windows were donated by classes that graduated there at West Point. To the 1740 house in Lumberville, Pennsylvania. It was a bread and breakfast with 24 rooms, and it was situated right on the banks of the Delaware River. Across the street from the 1740 house was a number of neat dwellings. Now the 1740 house was enlarged on an old site, and we understand that just one room retains the original beams and stone walls. It certainly has a very mellow country charm to it. That's the original area there, and this is our room. It overlooks the Delaware River. That's an antique store right across the street. And that's again looking at the Delaware River. Let's go to breakfast, shall we? All right, breakfast. You can see the goodies there. And this is in the sitting room. Well, I think it's time to go out and explore the area, don't you? So, let's go, shall we? Stop was at La Hosca, and this is the Spotted Hog, where we dined the night before. And right across the street was Peddlers Village. Now, Jan and Craig had told us to make certain that we viewed the Scarecrow display, which was there. And we're so pleased they told us about this, because it was something else, as you can see. Now, while I was out videoing this, inside one of the shops, Norma and Lois were doing what they really do best, and that's shopping. I have to admit, I was really taken with these wooden bird cages. I'm going to make one someday. As you can see, scarecrows were on display throughout the village. And this was an interesting one. It was entitled Velcro, and certainly it had a lot of Velcro used in putting it together. The village has a number of competitions and workshops throughout the year. One of the main ones comes at Christmas time, when they have a gingerbread competition. And as this one, they give cash prizes. It brings people in from all over to display their talents. The total prizes for this competition was over $6,000. Now, who do you think that is? Nancy Crow again. How appropriate. And what a play on words, huh? Well, from here, we went on to New Hope. Now, New Hope is a delightful little town, again in Bucks County, and it's noted for its antique stores. And right up ahead is a bridge that goes over the Delaware Canal. And take a look what's in the canal. Hi. Well, look at that. It's a mule-drawn barge. Now, the Delaware Canal opened in 1832. It's 60 miles of canal, and it operated until 1931, when the railroad put them out of business. And it's said that it carried whiskey and coal to Bristol and returned with manufactured and imported goods. Now, it's about noon. Let's listen to this carolyn. This is the New Hope and Ivyland Railroad, and it runs between New Hope and Lahaska, a distance of 9 miles. From here, we headed back to Philadelphia, and this is the City Hall, which is located at Penn Square. It was built in 1871 and was to be the tallest structure in the world at that time. From there, we went to the Liberty Bell Pavilion, and there was a guide talking about the Liberty Bell, so let's listen to her, shall we?
Century that it started to adopt symbolism.
We know, for instance, that in the 1820s, visitors to the city were told the story of independence and how this bell rang out to gather the town folk to hear the first public reading of the Declaration of Independence. And many then start out. Why did they choose it? Because they wanted to end slavery. They recalled the inscription atop the bell, which actually meant every 50 years one should cancel debts and free slaves to the Israelites. So go back and study Bible history. That is the meaning of the inscription. But what better symbol also than a bell that rang out for the Declaration of Independence? We band together to form a union. And upon its return to Philadelphia, sometime in the early 20th century, the suffragettes were rallying around and decided to make a copy of the bell, chain it up, and put it right next to Independence Hall. Who can tell me what a suffragette wanted the right to do? The vote. That's correct. Let's sing the bell. It goes directly above this drilled out portion, clear up through the word liberty, and into the crown of the bell. So it can't be rung anymore because it would further damage the bell, but also it wouldn't make a ringing sound either. But remember, what's important isn't really the crack, although that gives the bell charm. Okay? It's the word liberty. You're all welcome to take photographs.
There is, of course, the famous crack. It had been stop drilled and a couple of rivets installed. And that's Independence Hall. The bell, which hung there for so many years, was moved to the Liberty Bell Pavilion in 1976. Independence Hall was built in 1732, and in addition to the Declaration of Independence and Constitution being signed there, it was also where George Washington accepted the role of Commander-in-Chief of the colonial armies. As we watched these horse-drawn carriages go by, we wondered, how do they keep the streets so clean? Well, look what's hanging right behind that tail. Pretty clever. Will and Norma, as Philadelphia fades from view, our memories of this trip still remain fresh. And Lois and I really want to thank you guys for just making this trip so enjoyable. And all I can say is, let's do it again. God bless both of you.